In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was tohu vavohu, formlessness and void, and there was darkness on the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God hovered above the water. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that the light was good. And God divided between the light and between the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness was called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, one day. That, of course, is the beginning of our Torah, our sacred text. It is also the beginning of the Epic of Gilgamesh, almost word for word. It is found in Akkadian sources and Babylonian sources and the still more ancient Sumerian sources. It is a story and a description of a story that is at least 5,000 years old in terms of how old we have texts for this particular version. This concept of creation in mythology is important to the Torah as it is for every document, to answer the questions before we get to what should we be doing. We have to answer the basic human question of why things are the way they are. It is very important that the universe makes sense, that it have predictable patterns. Without predictable patterns, it's impossible to develop a healthy psyche and healthy society. You have to have some kind of belief that there will be a cycle and that you have some sort of empowerment in the maintenance of this cycle and in addressing disruptions to this cycle. The cycle is the cycle of seasons, of the planting of crops and their harvesting. It's the cycle of day and night. It's the cycle of warm and cold. It's the cycle of youth and then of aging. And it has certain constants to it. That everyone who is born will die. And that the civilization of which I am a part will go on after me indefinitely, even it has been here for an indeterminate period of time. In the old Sumerian legends, the gods themselves build the cities, and people only come later. The cities themselves are divine, and each one dedicated to a specific deity. Their eternity is guaranteed through the propitiation of this particular deity. We have elements of this religious attitude alive and well in us today in Judaism. This is Jerusalem. This is the eternity of the Jewish people. Now, we have had to get a bit creative with these concepts. We've had to adapt them and we've had to develop them, and we've had to adhere to some of them in absolute defiance of reality. We will have prophets who tell us that God still loves us even after we have been scattered and dispersed. And that is where we will part company with the ancients. They don't manage to redevelop their theology and their concepts that same way. But we are starting with this same point with the Torah and with creation. We have different names for God that's given here, but we can at the same time read it the way the sages have chosen to, that there is a single all-encompassing divinity that is the point of origin, that is the creator. How did things get to be the way they are? So first we have the story of creation that the Torah tells us. And then it will tell us of the state of humanity. Now, what do we observe about the state of humanity is something very universal. It exists with us still in the modern world. Certain aspects of the state of humanity. We are in disharmony with nature. How do we know we're in disharmony with nature? Well, we feel it. My cousin got a snake bite. My uncle was gored by an ox. And you remember the flood last year that ruined all our crops? And then there was that tornado that knocked over the village. So we know we have our problems with nature and that we are not completely in harmony with nature. And so we will need an explanation for how this disharmony took place. It must start with the fact that an all-good, all-positive God starts us out in harmony with nature and lets the plan develop from there. So our creation myth, our origin myth, will feature the first humans in harmony with nature, with each other, with their own psyches, with their own sexuality, with God, with everything. They're perfect and they're in the image of God and everything's going well. But it is the first moral lesson of the Torah that human willfulness and our weakness in giving in to temptation breaks this perfection and breaks this harmony. And now we are out of sync with nature. One of the most telling aspects of the curses is that of the snake. Why is the snake cursed? What's the purpose of cursing the snake? The snake is the epitome at this point in the post-garden story of our breaking harmony with nature. When you meet the human, the snake is told, you will bite him in the ankle. And when the human encounters you, he will crush you with his heel on your head. That's, it's no more Dr. Dolittle. We don't get to walk with the animals or talk with the animals. Being expelled from Eden now, we have an explanation for another one of the negative aspects in which humanity sees itself as an existential reality, and a very real one in our day as well. You have to earn a living. Well, why is that bad, and were we remembering ever a time in Eden when we didn't? Yes, we were, and maybe it is kind of bad. The early aspects of the Torah may have been harmonizing very early styles of living. We see often that there are conflicted styles of life in the Torah that the Torah attempts to harmonize. In the next generation, we will see one of the great classics, which is the lifestyle of the herdsman versus the lifestyle of the dirt farmer. What we see in the casting out from Eden may be the lifestyle of the hunter-gatherer versus the lifestyle of the agriculturalist. Now, in the memory of the agriculturalist, or in the first generations of the agriculturalist, and what do we mean memory? We mean stories that the Zeta and Baba tell, but we also mean that they occasionally encounter people who are adhering to the old lifestyle. The hunter-gatherers were very admired. They seem to just pick the fruit from the trees. Everything seems to yield to them. They are in great health and they have great strength. And the lore and legend surrounding Adam is always this of physical greatness, of physical perfection. Of course, in reality, the life of the hunter-gatherer is a far more rigorous lifestyle than that of the agriculturalist. A higher infant mortality, more room that you need to feed the same number of mouths. It's altogether a less efficient, more difficult way to live. But somehow or other, we have a tendency of idealizing the good old days, and I have come to see the progression of the Torah as being, and Tanakh in fact, as constantly having that theme. Well, back in the old days, I hear the stories, and my grandfather was a big strong guy with a spear, and he didn't bother with milking the goats and threshing the hay. When he wanted something, he went out and he killed it and he ate it and he lived good, and everything yielded to him, and this was Eden, this was its garden. There is a midrash, and we must not poo-poo the midrashim in terms of their not being contemporary with the Torah. Even from a non-traditional standpoint, they undoubtedly represent a very, very old oral tradition. So we can't rely on it in being absolutely accurate and intact, but it might give us shades of certain meanings. There is a midrash. It is a midrash of the garments given to Adam in Eden. Now you remember the story, I'll remind you if you don't, that after they eat from the fruit of the tree of knowledge, one of the things that they suddenly realize is we're naked. That's another thing that settled agriculturalists sometimes reminisce, for better or for worse, their view of the hunter-gatherer. The hunter-gatherer is somewhat free sexually and with his body, and would show his body, whereas the civilized, settled agriculturalist has developed all sorts of taboos about covering himself. So now they suddenly realize they're naked. And they grab fig leaves, and they put on their little fig leaves, and afterwards, God dresses them in garments of skin, of animal skin. It is not discussed that they killed any animals, that they skinned the animals. God just gives them these garments of animal skin. That's what it says in the text. The midrash says that Adam kept these garments when he was expelled. Apparently you could pack a bag after God kicks you out of Eden. And he takes these garments with him out of Eden, and they have upon them, according to the midrash, the scent of Eden. And they are really good at drawing animals to them, and whoever has them becomes a very successful hunter. They are passed down, these garments, father to son. And they find their way, do you know the midrash, to who?
Esau.
Before Esau. Who do you get them from? Nimrod. the mighty hunter is the one who inherits these, and he becomes a mighty hunter because